This is a video about replacing the power window motor in a 1999 Pontiac Sunfire. The first thing you want to do after you take off the interior door panel is make sure the window is secured in the up position. So what you have to do is disconnect it from the regulator rail. I'll show you that in a minute. And then slide it to the top and put a couple of pieces of tape on it. If it's already up, great. Just tape it so that it doesn't drop down when you pull the regulator and motor assembly out. After you take off the interior splash shield, water shield plastic, you might just as well cut it off around the door hanger, armrest hanger, and then put some duct tape around on all that sticky black gooey crap. Otherwise, you're just going to have it all over you. Also use latex gloves when you're working on this. There's a lot of grease on the inside of the door that you'll run into when you go to take this all apart. What we're going to be removing and then replacing is what is called the power window motor and regulator assembly. The bottom rail, as you see there, the longer one, that's what attaches to the bottom of the window that you're moving up and down, and the top rail actually attaches to the door sheet metal. The motor, as you can see here, this has already been replaced. The old motor, apparently the motor's dead, doesn't work. The new motor does work. It's been tested with the old power cord in the windows. It does activate, so make sure you check that before you go putting this regulator motor assembly back. These are fairly inexpensive pieces. You can pick these up at Rock Auto, 1A Auto, a number of different places. You can get the regulator and motor, which I would recommend you do. That's not what I did here. I'm using the old regulator, but the motor is about 25 to 30 bucks. You can get the entire assembly for about 50. Probably the better way to do it. But if you're on a tight budget, just go with the motor. You'll have to knock the rivets out. As you can see here, the rivets have been removed and screws or small bolts and nuts with lock washers have been reinstalled. There's 3 of them there that you can see. If you have a manual for the car, it'll point out, if you have a repair manual for the car for 95 through 2005 Pontiac Sunfire or Chevrolet Cavalier, it will show you where the rivet holes are. Of course, these cars were built to be cheap, so everything's riveted together pretty much. But you can see here, and this is kind of a mess, where I've had to first drill out. You can use a small drill bit, about 1/8 of an inch drill, and try to drill the core out of the rivet. It's just like a large pop rivet, and then pull that out with a claw hammer, something like this. Just hook in under the rivets and pop them out. So you've got really 5 different places here. The first one is up here. This is where the motor bracket is attached. Now the motor I received has the wrong bracket, but there's not a lot of torque on it. I may just jerry-rig a bracket in there just to kind of stabilize it. Otherwise, there are 4 holes other than this one. This one, 1, 2, 3 right here, and then up under the door arm brace bracket, there's one that you have to get to. Now this is the 99. It may vary slightly depending on the model year you're working on. And then the bottom lower rail, there's a bolt that goes through here into the rail, and a bolt that goes through right here into the rail. And to back off there, you can see it just straddles across that opening right there. Here's the actuator levers that come down to the door latch and to the lock mechanism. And you're going to have to bring that regulator out through this hole in the door panel and put it back in. And I'm going to show you how we're going to attach the bolts to the replaced assembly so that we can deal with nuts on the inside. Okay, first put the 2 of the bolts through the holes that are going to be the hardest to reach because of finger clearance on the back, and that's up there by the gear. So using a hacksaw blade, just position one and kind of lift up and put the bolt in through the nut, and the same on the other one. then you can retrieve the hacksaw. A good way to hold the nuts on the back side with the bolts through is to just create either use a shim stock, wood shim stock, or create a little shim stock with the saw and some pieces of wood, and tap it in there so that it holds the nut in place. It'll be easy enough to remove. A lot of shadows here, so apologies for the video. Okay, the next thing we do is take out the bolts and hope that the nuts will stay in place so we can position this inside the car. Once the regulator assembly and motor are fed back into this hole right here toward the front, then you have to attach the bolts that we talked about before. This is still a couple of rivets here, but then that bolt that's up underneath the arm bracket, and then this one right here, and this one right here. This top one, I just could not get that to stay in at this point, so it's still got 3 attached. Plus, as I mentioned earlier, the motor assembly is backwards as far as the mounting bracket right here, so I'll have to make a strap across that point. The next step and final step is to attach the window to this bolt here, and then carefully lower it down and attach the bolt down through this hole right. If you align the bottom rail about like this, and then just ease the white tab down across the bolt stud, and the same with this hole right here. So then you can line it up right, and you can tighten the bolts right, and then carefully inch it back up and back down. Don't jam it up and jam it down in case something's not perfectly lined.